Manchester United might have a £100 million player on their hands already at Old Trafford, and the club hierarchy are increasingly aware just how valuable he could become if his current trajectory continues. Rather than looking solely to the transfer market to find a marquee star, there is a growing feeling inside the club that one of their own emerging talents has the potential to reach that kind of valuation in the next phase of United's rebuild. For a fan base used to seeing the club linked with nine-figure deals every summer, the idea that a future £100 million footballer is already wearing red is a powerful narrative, but it also comes with pressure, expectation, and big decisions about how United manage his development from this point. From the club's perspective, this evolving situation ties directly into a wider strategic shift in recruitment and squad building under Erik Ten Hag and the new football structure around him. United have spent heavily on ready-made stars in the past, and too often they have not seen a proper return on that investment, either in performance or resale value. The lesson from those years is clear. The modern game rewards clubs that identify talent early, give it a defined role and pathway, and then watch the value rise as performances improve and the player becomes central to the project. United believe they finally have a player who ticks all of those boxes, and it is changing how they talk about the future in internal conversations. Within Carrington, staff do not only see the technical and physical attributes that could justify a nine-figure valuation one day, they also see the mentality that is needed to bridge the gap between high-potential prospect and genuine elite. Coaches have spoken about his capacity to handle instructions, his willingness to repeat demanding off-the-ball work, and his growing influence in big-game moments, all of which are hallmarks of a player who can carry a top side rather than simply decorate it. United's analysts are tracking key metrics, end product, progressive carries, duels, defensive contributions, and watching those numbers creep steadily towards the levels associated with some of Europe's most expensive players. This is why the talk of £100M is not just tabloid hype thrown around for clicks, but a reflection of how the market behaves when a young, versatile player starts performing at a high level in a Premier League shirt. Recent windows have shown that elite clubs will pay extraordinary sums for footballers who can influence games in the final third, operate in multiple roles, and still have several years of improvement ahead of them. When you add the Manchester United factor, the global profile, the spotlight, the commercial reach, any player who becomes a genuine star at Old Trafford will inevitably attract valuations that reflect both sporting and commercial power. For Erik Ten Hag, this development is both a blessing and a test of his management. On one hand, having a potential £100 million asset in the squad strengthens his case when he speaks about the project, because it shows that his work on the training ground is translating into elite-level growth for individuals, not just short-term results. On the other hand, he has to make sure that the narrative around the player does not spiral out of control and create unrealistic expectations that could stall that progress. That means carefully choosing when to start him, when to rest him, how to use him tactically, and how often to expose him to the most intense fixtures in the calendar. Inside the dressing room, the rise of such a player can have a galvanizing effect if it is handled correctly. Teammates see that strong performances are rewarded with trust, bigger roles, and public praise, and that can lift standards for the entire group. At the same time, there is always a risk that too much outside focus on one individual distorts the balance and creates an over-reliance on his moments of inspiration rather than the collective structure United are trying to build. Striking that balance is one of the subtle but vital tasks for the senior leadership group and the coaching staff as they navigate the next stage of the season. Financially, the idea of having a £100M caliber footballer under contract gives United a degree of leverage they have not always enjoyed in recent years. In a world where transfer fees continue to rise and financial fair play regulations force clubs to think more carefully about how they spend and recoup money, developing a homegrown or early acquired asset of this magnitude can transform what is possible in future windows. If United decide to build around him, his presence can reduce the need to chase expensive solutions in his position and allow resources to be prioritized elsewhere on the pitch. If at some distant point the club chose to cash in, the funds generated could realistically underwrite an entire reshaping of multiple areas of the squad in one go. Another key point is how this potential £100 million valuation influences United's stance in contract negotiations. When a player's stock rises sharply, the club must move quickly to protect their position with improved terms and a timeline that reflects his new status. That usually means a higher wage bracket, performance-related bonuses, and possibly clauses that recognize interest from Champions League heavyweights. For United, it is crucial to get ahead of the curve so they are not dragged into a reactive situation where the players' camp holds all the cards after a breakthrough campaign. The transfer market context also reinforces why United see this particular talent as so valuable. Across Europe, clubs are being quoted eye-watering prices for top wingers, forwards, and attacking midfielders, sometimes well above the €80 million to €100 million range for players who are still proving themselves at the highest level. When scouts and decision-makers compare those external options with the production and potential they are already witnessing internally, it becomes obvious why there is such excitement about what United might have on their hands. It is far easier to justify backing your own emerging star than gambling a similar sum on someone who would still need to adapt to the club and the league. Of course, numbers like £100m are always hypothetical until an offer actually lands on the table, and both the club and the player will know that. Right now, what matters more than any projected fee is that he keeps delivering on the pitch, keeps improving under coaching, and keeps showing that his game has levels still to unlock. The Premier League is unforgiving. Young talents who look unstoppable for a few months can quickly be worked out by opponents if they do not continue to evolve. That is why United staff are focusing on broadening his skill set, decision-making, off-the-ball movement, combinations with teammates, so that he can sustain his impact even as teams pay him more attention. From a fan point of view, the emergence of a potential £100 million figurehead is something to savor. After years of watching other clubs unearth superstars and sell them for vast sums, United supporters can feel that, finally, they might be seeing their own version of that story unfold in front of them. It connects emotionally with the club's history of promoting youth and nurturing talent, while also aligning with the realities of the modern, financially driven game. For match-going fans at Old Trafford and the global audience following every touch, there is now an added buzz whenever he gets on the ball, because everyone senses that they might be watching the early chapters of a very expensive footballing story. At the same time, a degree of patience will be essential from the stands and on social media as this narrative grows. Even the most gifted young players will have quieter games, dips in form, or spells where the manager uses them differently for tactical reasons, and that should not be mistaken for a sudden loss of potential. If United are serious about helping him reach the kind of value that is being discussed, they will need to shield him at times and keep the noise at a manageable level. Supporters have a role in that, backing the process rather than reacting wildly to every individual performance. There is also a symbolic element to the idea that United might have a £100 million player already in the building. For years, the club have been a buyer of expensive talent rather than a creator of it, which has fed into criticism of their recruitment and development model. If this player continues on his current path, it would send a powerful message that United are once again a place where careers can be launched to the very top of the game, not just a destination for stars made elsewhere. That, in turn, could influence how future targets and young prospects view the prospect of joining the club. On the training ground, the coaching staff are fine-tuning his role to make sure he is positioned to affect games as often as possible. They are looking at the zones where he is most dangerous, the combinations that get the best out of him, and the shapes that allow him to receive the ball in space rather than with his back to goal. Video analysis sessions are highlighting patterns from recent matches, the runs that hurt defenses, the moments to attack the box, the times to recycle possession, so that he can repeat those actions consistently. This kind of detailed work is exactly what helps a strong spell of form harden into long-term elite performance. Tactically, his emergence gives Ten Hag new options when it comes to game plans against different types of opponent. Against low blocks, his ability to beat a man or thread a decisive pass can be the key to unlocking stubborn defenses that sit deep and protect the edge of the area. Against more aggressive sides that push up and leave space in behind, his pace and timing of runs can turn United into a devastating counter-attacking threat. Having that kind of flexible weapon is one of the reasons top clubs are willing to attach enormous price tags to players of this profile. Looking ahead, the club's recruitment team will factor his development into every transfer conversation they have over the next few windows. If he is going to be a cornerstone of the attack, they need to sign players who complement his strengths rather than crowd his space or replicate his weaknesses. That may mean prioritizing profiles that bring balance, a different type of forward, a creative midfielder who can feed him early, or fullbacks whose overlapping and underlapping runs open up channels for him to exploit. Smart squad building around a potential £100 million star is how elite teams maximize both performance and asset value. In the broader Premier League landscape, the rise of a player with this kind of ceiling at United will not go unnoticed by rivals. Opposing managers are already starting to plan specifically for how to limit his influence, whether by doubling up on his side, cutting off passing lanes into him, or targeting him physically to test his resilience. How he responds to that additional attention will be one of the real tests of whether he can justify talk of a 9-figure valuation. United, for their part, will try to use the focus he draws to create space for others in key attacking zones. Ultimately, the notion that Manchester United might already possess a £100 million footballer is less about a literal price tag today and more about the direction of travel. It captures the sense that, after years of expensive mistakes, the club may finally be nurturing a player whose value is rising because of clear planning, smart coaching, and performances that genuinely move games in United's favor. If he stays fit, keeps his head, and continues to evolve, there is every chance that the market will eventually reflect the excitement currently building inside Old Trafford. For now, the focus will be on keeping him grounded, keeping him improving, and letting his football make the loudest statement about just how valuable he can become for Manchester United.